Hey friends, welcome back to another devlog for WizardChess. As usual, my name is Ben, and let's get straight into it. Yes, that is my presentation. Cool, so this is devlog 18. Once again, I'm just assuming I continue to count these correctly. And we're bringing out version 0.7.0 of the game in this update. So, like, version numbers are a little bit, I mean, they're kind of open to interpretation, but we feel about 70% done with the game. That's why it's 0.7. I can't promise that's accurate, but yeah, it's very hard to estimate how done a video game is, and we'll talk a lot more about that in this devlog, but we've made a sizable step forward here, but maybe not on the stuff that I expected to work on. That's probably the summary here. Before I get into what we have done in this last update, just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has left a review on the game on Steam. If you own the game and you haven't left a review yet and you like it, please consider leaving one. This really helps people find out about the game. And come, full release at the end of early access, the reviews here will make a big difference for how people perceive the full game in its entirety. So yeah, if you like it, please help us out. It helps a lot. Like, a lot, actually. That's probably the most important thing behind wish lists, honestly, on Steam. So, today we're going to cover... This might look like a short list if you've seen the other devlog videos. There's a lot to get into in the details, I'll just promise you that. So first up, we're going to talk about the Steam Deck and controls for the game more generally, because controls have been an ongoing thought for me as a designer here. We've got a new idea called the challenge selection menu. I will explain this and the new shop UI. These are all kind of related to the controls, but we wanted to go into some more specifics. We have a new unit to talk about. And then this big chunky item at the end is the progression system, along with explaining how content is going to work, I think, going forward. So, as always, jam-packed. I'm probably going to talk really fast. I'm already doing it. Hope you enjoy. So, yes. Weren't we working on a new biome? If you watched the last devlog, you would probably have seen me very confidently saying, and we're going to move on to the next biome, and that will be the focus of the next update. We kind of did this, as in we did a lot of work on the next biome, and then we just kept coming back to our experiences, the experiences of streamers, and the experiences of the players in our Discord, and just kind of taking the temperature of where the game is at. It makes more sense to us to focus on making what we already have as good as possible before we go on and just throw as much content at it as possible. And this is frustrating because if you followed the project for a long time, you know how long we've been doing this design process, but I think it's key not to start rushing and getting desperate now that we're getting nearer the end of the project. It's tempting to just start checking things off and flying through the list, but the thing that I keep coming back to is that this is my view, but I know that Ricky agrees with this, we have no interest in doing this as quickly as possible. The goal was never to make the most profitable game imaginable or to optimize the development here. The goal for a long time now has been, okay, if we're going to take a long time to make this game because we're doing it part-time, thinking carefully, making it really what we want, then we shouldn't rush anything. We should make sure that it is as good as possible at every level and that we know we've realized the potential that's there. This is counter to a lot of advice you'll see game devs give about being really proactive about getting things done and shipping. I'm not here to talk about the philosophy part of this in this talk. I could give many speeches on this topic about how I see the creative process working. But long story short, we need to do what we think is best for the game. What is best for the game? So that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. This update does not include the new biome though. That is why this slide's here. I wanted it to, but it just didn't make sense. And realistically, I looked at the analytics, our players wouldn't have been playing the new content anyway because most of them aren't getting that far into the game before they kind of stall out and don't know what to do next. So, we will come back to all of that. Let's talk about the Steam Deck. Here's a grainy picture that I included of me running it on the Steam Deck. I guess this is proof that it does work. I have been playing it on the Steam Deck quite a lot, actually. This is my new way of playing the game primarily, is sitting on my couch and playtesting that way. The problem with the Steam Deck is that it forced us to acknowledge that we basically have over-fixated on mouse controls for the game, and there were many interactions, most of them you couldn't do with the keyboard or a controller, you had to use the mouse. That was never going to be acceptable for a full release, and so I bit the bullet and rewrote a lot of code to start to support multiple control schemes for everything. So let me go forward one step here. This is just a video that shows a whole bunch of different input stuff. You'll see me not moving the mouse in this video, and you'll see me controlling it with the keyboard entirely. The point of this update is like largely to add this support in so that if you're playing, you can see the orthographic view here as well instead of the isometric view with a D-pad. It makes more sense not to have the grid all rotated away from you, but you can play with either option still. You can set it. Yeah, once I used the Steam Deck, I began to realize there's a lot of user experience things we were neglecting because we were assuming certain characteristics about the desktop, the size of the window, how far from the screen you'll be. So this is really like, we're not done with Steam Deck specific changes, and we're not done with controller specific changes, but you can play the game with a controller or a keyboard now, and that makes me very happy. There are a couple of bits that you can't quite operate the right way, and there are some interfaces that you'll see that we still want to improve, but it is functional. That was my goal. And like, I don't want to like make a sub story out of this, but like, to be honest, this was really hard. Like, this is a 5-year-old project where I had to rewrite all of the input handling code. Like, that's not something you sign up for as a developer very often. And yeah, it's been a little bit, stressful's the wrong word, just difficult. Like, it's demotivating to work on stuff that's not that interesting. Like, it's important, but trust me, writing the code for this is not interesting. It's really fiddly. But as you can see, I think it's really worth it in the long run because the experience of playing this on the Steam Deck with the D-pad and everything, I suddenly felt like I was playing like Advance Wars, and it just felt right. So yeah, expect more fix-ups and more tweaks to the way that this works. But yeah, it works. It does function end to end. So this video is pretty long. I just kind of captured footage of the entire game and every situation that comes up, so you can see like, yeah, here you can reveal rewards with space. You can assign them with the arrow keys here and space to select. If we keep going through the run, there's lots more of this. We fight the boss. There's a bit at the end of this I wanted to show you, which is the victory screen. Yeah, so this has changed here. We'll talk about that in a bit, but you can also get out of this screen using just the keyboard or the controller. So that's like the closed loop. You can play through the game from the start of a run to the end of a run on just the keyboard or the controller. And I can breathe a sigh of relief that I can say that finally after this long. So let's not linger too long on just talking about controls. Let's talk about the challenge selection, which you probably saw on the title screen during that last video. We've reworked the title screen in general a bit in this update. I'm skipping over the visual parts of that. But what you're seeing here is you can now pick the challenge level you face an opponent at. As a reminder, the way that this used to work is that opponents had ranks and playing against them would level them up, and eventually they would tick up a rank and you'd unlock some stuff when you did that. This has lots of problems. And I don't want to talk about the macro progression just yet. That's what I'm saving for the end because I know I'll rabbit on about it for ages. But in this like challenge selection context, there's a couple of pieces. You don't always want to fight the hardest thing possible when you play the game. Sometimes you want to do something interesting. That is a consideration we were missing in the previous model. It got monotonically more difficult the more that you won, no matter what you did. You wouldn't be able to avoid that. That's not amazing, but most players probably just want to keep like playing the hardest level. That's fine. But the other thing this provides us with is each challenge level comes with a set starting party you build from. It has a set of enemies you will face in that biome, and it increases the difficulty as well. And this gives us a lot of control surface area as the devs to make interesting runs where you get an interesting starting party against interesting enemies, for example. And this is the structure I think the game has been missing, is a bit of like, here's an interesting place to start from, can you complete this goal? Because if you get to pick your starting party, you kind of just pick the good one. And if you don't get to pick your starting party, you get annoyed at the game. But with this, you get to pick your starting party from within a given constrained set. And later on, there will be higher level challenges where your party is randomized still and we do all this fun stuff. But this gives you a structure to be like, I know what to do next. I'll play this opponent again at a higher difficulty with new units. That'll be fun. I an N of 1 here in this experiment, but I personally have found this a lot more fun. So hopefully you do too. That's my my thinking so far. But it was difficult to rip out the existing rank system, but we've just been trying to get really real about A, not overcomplicating the design where it doesn't need to be, and B, what is the fun in this game and how can we hone in on it? To me, the fun is exploring how can I make this party work and what levers can I pull to pull myself towards making this party work? Like, what can I manipulate in the game? What seams can I open up? So, yeah, I like this a lot. It couples the unlock cycle and everything to this process of beating challenges instead of having to unlock things in different ways. Again, we'll touch on this later. But yeah, the way you should think about it now is this three-stage process of like, I come into the game, I'm going to face an opponent, what challenge level am I going to pick? And all of that has specified a starting point that you now build upon in your run. So the run is about like solving the problem of closing the gap between your starting conditions and the challenge. Anyway, moving on. I know I'm going fast, but look, there's a lot in this video. So, the shop UI. Previously, the way the shop worked, it was not keyboard compatible at all or controller compatible. Now we've got this menu here where you can cycle through the options in the shop with the arrow keys at the bottom. It moves the cursor between the items and you can pick from the list. So this is bare bones is the way that I would put it. And I want to just put that out there up front. This is not the final design for the shop. This is a shop that works with the controller and D-pad. On the next couple of slides, I have some thinking about the shop to share with you, but we really just need to sort of start to formalize, okay, from how do we get to the end of the game's development from here? Like, what UI patterns do we need? How can we make it easy for ourselves to keep developing the game and take it to where we want it to go? So this gets us part of the way there, which is that you can surface all of the actions in the shop easily. You're not micromanaging moving the bar around on the floor, and the screen is not covered in buttons that sometimes get cut off at the edges. Now, there's lots of downsides. Like, I think this is a visually less interesting shop, just first up. And if you're used to the old one, it's probably a bit confusing just to be like, what the hell's going on here? It does show you the sacrifice pit and the shopkeeper are options for you to interact with in this list, which is something many people miss. That's a benefit, I suppose you'd say. But if I move forward here, I think this is the start of a solution to this problem, not the conclusion. Where, for example, this is a screenshot I took this morning because I'm still fiddling with this, even though we've shipped the update. Like, we're always tinkering at any point. So imagine this is the old and the new shop together here, right? Where you've got the buttons that you can click with the mouse overhead, and it's kind of cool. It draws your attention to the things in the room that are interesting. But you also have the ability to cycle with the D-pad and press the button at the bottom here. So this is a really close by thing that I think I might switch the build over to so that you have the choice of both, because for mouse players, this is definitely a nicer interface to click the buttons. And as a mouse player during development, I selfishly want that to be good. But, to the next slide, we've been thinking about like, well, maybe there's further to go here in terms of the shop. Like, is showing it in a room that important? Maybe we should go towards what a lot of deck builders do and just surface, hey, you can buy this stuff on big cards. To be clear, this is a mock-up. This is not in the game. I'm not saying this will be in the game. I know that doesn't mean much to people, but it like for me, this is just a sketch. And it looks pretty fancy, but it's a sketch. It gets the same benefits I talked about before, which is it surfaces all of the relevant actions in the shop visibly to you on the interface. It covers up the room, which loses a bit of like cool factor, is what I was calling this, but at the cost of making it really obvious what you're buying. So the trade-off of making it obvious what you're buying, which is good. I think it would be really good to make you excited about what you're buying when you come into the shop. The other thing to consider with this is that it's very flexible. Like, if you have this model of like putting some cards on the screen, you could make many different scenarios out of it, of lots of different situations of cards to pick between with different costs, with like cutscene type interactions. These are all mock-ups. Again, none of this is in the game, what I'm showing you here. This is naughty. I don't normally do this, but I just wanted to talk about this problem a bit because it's pretty open overall. Like, we're not done with solving this. I think somewhere in between all of this, I'm going to find an answer that doesn't involve like redesigning the whole system too much, but we need to do something better than any of the options we've had before for the shops, because they're really core to the run. And this is a big chapter, so a big part of the chapter about coming up next, I think, is continuing to work on shops and really make them as solid as possible. But yeah, the way we interact with them is still being designed. So stay tuned for me to, like, I'll tweet about this, I'm sure, but to keep updating this as well. We may even land some patches with some steps along the way before the next big update. So coming off of UI for just a second, it's probably worth talking about the tourist. So the tourist is a new unit. It's this dude with the helmet here and the suitcase. So the gimmick with the tourist is that they're on holiday. I mean, that's kind of the name, it gives it away, but they have their bag with them. Their trusty luggage follows them wherever they move on the board, as you can see in this video. And when they stand next to their luggage, they get a defense buff from their luggage, and the luggage is like a wall that they can use to block things. So this unit is particularly useful in the desert, where you can obstruct hallways and things using the suitcase. We are still dialing this in, but I think this idea is cute. It's useful in ways you might not expect, especially when you interact with the other units, because you can, like, for example, you can warp the suitcase around, like you can use the suitcase to cut off an enemy's escape or to block an enemy from coming in. You can buff up the suitcase and make it really strong at buffing tourists, because the skill of the suitcase is the size of the defense buff it bestows upon a tourist. If you have multiple tourists and multiple suitcases, this gets really interesting. So anyway, I'm just showing you that this unit exists. We have a lot of other units in the pipeline, and in fact, some of them are built, but you just can't get to them in the game yet. And you know what? Let's stop saying that I'm about to talk about it and talk about the progression system. So, again, this is inside baseball, this diagram. Like, parts of this are not even implemented in the game, and it is all subject to change. That's my disclaimer for literally everything I say. But this is a chart of your journey through the game as the player. So you start over here where my mouse is on Cloaky. You come in, first party, you beat Cloaky. This unlocks Cormag, which is where you're onto on this line here now. If you play Cormag with this party, you get the Rogue. So you beat challenge level J, you unlock the Rogue, you do challenge level I. In level I, you start with a Rogue in your party, and if you defeat it, you'll unlock a Lancer. And this is kind of the progression the whole way now, where every time you beat a challenge level, you will either unlock a unit, or in the case of this transition, when you beat level H and get to G for Cormag, you will unlock the Snake as an opponent on this other path. So this diagram is not going to appear in games, so I'm not too concerned about the understandability of it. But this is the idea, is that you either unlock a unit from each one, or you unlock a new opponent. And then here, if you beat the Snake and Cormag at level D, once we've added it, you will get to the new biome from that process. And then there's more in the existing biomes past that too. So each opponent can go all the way up to rank A, and eventually to rank Master is the plan. But Cormag you fight from J, the Snake you unlock at G, and then fight from G. The final boss, Arabella, you will unlock at C and fight from C. Well, unlock from D, fight from C, etc. So this is the structure we're thinking of in the game now, where, like, if you defeat a challenge, you will get something. Additionally, if you replay challenges you've beaten, you will unlock traits, and you unlock different traits depending on which part of this journey you're in. So replaying these levels versus these, versus these, versus these, you'll get different traits of different kinds from those. We're trying to reward you for playing, so, like, you'll unlock stuff just for winning and for experiencing the game. There is no more ability to buy unlocks with Vim. It's gone. We've changed our mind completely on how this should work. As players, this might be annoying. As a designer, I think this is just how making games kind of works, where, like, we've just been doing the good enough thing. Sorry, the good enough thing. One set of fingers looks weird. Good enough thing at every stage of development so far, and it just wasn't good enough anymore. That's the short of it. Like, I looked at the analytics we've got, thank you to those of you who play with the analytics enabled, and most people just hadn't experienced most of what's in the game. They hadn't unlocked it, because the odds of unlocking require you to have enough Vim, randomly get it presented to you in the shop as an opportunity, and then buy it. It's too rare. It's not good enough. So instead, now, whenever you beat the game, you have a high likelihood of unlocking something every time you play. I think this is the most obvious motivational loop imaginable for a roguelike, and we're stubborn and always like try and pick the most like, oh, what if it was like this? What if it was interesting and different? But like, you should probably get rewards from playing well, right? Like, it's the most like obvious game design thing imaginable. So okay, what is all that to say? In this update, you can't get past this line still. You can get up to rank D for everyone. You'll see here, you can unlock the tourist here in this transition. This is how you get the tourist. And this is all the existing units in the game are unlockable up to here. There are some new units up here, like the Arbalist, the Zealot, the Ronin, the Juggler, the Knave, and the Pescator is what we've got in the diagram. All subject to change. Some of these are implemented. The plan is that the next update we do will include some amount, but maybe not all of this purple block. The reason being that we need to get feedback on this whole new biome and boss and stuff without like building out the entire like end of the game highest level difficulty. We need to know how it's working for players. So there'll probably be one update that lends a chunk of this area when we get it done, and then it will continue to change still. So I don't want you to think that like in the next update everything suddenly is going to arrive. That would be unrealistic. While I continue to talk about this a bit more, I'm just going to play footage from the game in the background. So this progression system is the result of us really zooming out on what the game is. I'm just kind of like riffing here, so forgive me if I don't have as clear of a thing I'm saying, but the thing that's the way I think about designing a video game is as a series of like concentric game loops. You might have heard of a game loop before. If not, it is a series of actions you complete in a loop. Like I've been playing Tears of the Kingdom on Switch, right? One of the gameplay loops in Tears of the Kingdom is, hey, is that a shrine on the horizon? I should tag it. I should go and check out what's in that shrine. Cool, I beat that shrine. I got an orb. Ooh, I can get more health. I should go back and get health. Ooh, now I can probably go and do something over here, which was too hard for me before. Ooh, what's that on the horizon? And it reconnects, right? You keep doing this loop. It's only one of the loops in that game. Anyway, the loop in our game has been, like, you close it at higher and higher levels as you get on in development. So at the start, we were just trying to make a battle feel interesting at all. And then we were trying to make multiple back-to-back battles feel interesting. And then we were trying to make one run from start to the boss interesting. And then we were trying to make multiple runs of the same boss interesting. And then you're trying to make multiple bosses. Then you're trying to come up with a way to make it that as you experience those multiple bosses across multiple difficulty levels, how do you make that loop of like, ooh, what do I want? Who should I fight next? What unit should I use? That needs to become interesting. And that's the level we're sort of graduating to here, I think, is the overall progression is now part of the loop where you're like, oh yeah, okay, I want to beat this challenge so that I can find out what's on the other side of it, or I want to replay this challenge to get more traits in the pool. Like, it's not necessarily 100% closed, but this is the first time I've felt that we have wrapped something around the outside of the game. And in this metaphor of concentric game loops, I think we probably have one more layer to go still after this until the game is completely finished. And that's the layer of you boot the game up, there's an intro cutscene, you land on the title, it like takes you to the tutorial, and you just flow through the start to end of the whole game, and it feels right. So we're not there yet, that part. That's what I would call version 1 when we have what I just described. We are at version 0.7, so we have a little bit of room to use an excuse there. This is so hard, what I'm talking about, because you find that you can't just leave the inner loop as is. You have to keep adjusting things to make the outer experience fun and keep the inner experience working and sane. So please just, there's a moment of being like, I know we might seem like we're churning on elements of the design, and we are a little bit, where we're trying things out, seeing what sticks. I have exposed the player base to a lot more of the development side of things in this game than you normally get in early access, both through these devlogs and just the patches you guys get are like, they change things really often. It swings wildly. We've got a hill to climb on the other side of this still, basically, and that's what I'm reflecting on. So maybe we should move forward to talk about that. this is the changelog from the patch. You can read this in the actual game. It's not too long, but it outlines the actual details of new traits, new units, new options and things that are too small to talk about in this devlog. So on the what comes next front, which is really what I was talking about before, we've got the Fey biome and the Fey boss. So this is like, I've got the asterisks here. This mostly is done, but we have to playtest, balance, refine, dial it in. Like, it. I'm not saying it's like good to go, but we've got most of the content made. Like the enemies are made, the map generation works. There are new units that can be unlocked that way. There are new mechanics in that biome. Some of them need to be finished. But yeah, it's pretty close. So I expect that the next update we put out will include the Fey biome. It will not include the entire ending of the game. We will start working towards master difficulty and what this experience of like, you're really good at the game, what that looks like. I wanted to include daily challenges and things as well down that path where like there's a lot of stuff to do. This is kind of obvious there. But the thing we're really thinking about actively as the design direction is this spoke out here of like control and synergy and variety. So one of the things we need to nail in this gameplay loop is that yes, playing multiple challenges gives you different starting parties and different enemies and things, but playing the same starting party over and over again doesn't really have as much variety as we'd like yet. So the current chapter of thinking is like, how do we let players have more control over how they build their run so that they can create more synergies between things, and that will require more variety in the drops that are available to some extent. We want you to be able to start building more engines in the more traditional sense of like how trading card games often work. And it's doable now in places, but we'd like it to be easier and more incentivized. So that's kind of like the design frontier, is that process of how do you make it really like, if you're like a WizardChess god, like how do you get the best possible outcome for your party over the course of the run? And I think that's kind of the thing I zoned in on the more I've thought about this and talked about it with Ricky, is that the fun part of a deck builder is building the deck. Like using that deck that you've built to destroy the opponent is also fun, but it's only fun because you built your deck and you had fun doing it. So it has to be mostly about building the deck and then only a little bit about using it. And we've probably tended too far towards using it, not enough about building it. I should stop this devlog because this one is getting long, but what I wanted to say to like cap this off is we are experimenting with greatly increasing the number of shops, reward rooms, trade offers, etc. you get, and reducing the amount of combat you go through with the sets. Like you should have something change between you and every combat encounter ideally. This is how Super Auto Pets works, for example. It has to work that way in that game. I think it works that way for a reason. It's more interesting to change something every time you go into a combat. So we're kind of aiming in that direction. I'm sorry that I presented so many open-ended design things, but I guess you can see where we're at. Like we are really like crossing a frontier here with the game to being like, oh, it's actually like it could be done. It hasn't felt like it could be done at any point in development so far until now. And suddenly we're like rounding that corner being like, it might work. Like I'm having a lot of fun playing the game, and I'll just pick it up and play a run a day, like as in if it was any other deck builder. And that's really cool for me as the person who's made it to get that kind of enjoyment out of it. And I know we're not quite there for other people to get that same level of enjoyment because they don't know all these systems. They're not being exposed to them in the right way progressively. But I can see that like the destination, I suppose, from where I sit, and that's awesome. So yeah, let's move along. Look, I could talk all day about the game. I tend to. It's anyone who'll listen to me. So next devlog, we'll have plenty more to discuss, I'm sure. Please, if you'd like to hear the next devlog, then subscribe for more. They're not that frequent, but we're trying to be fairly consistent about this and not put out a video unless there's something decent to talk about in it. I'm not going to give you nothing devlogs. I do want to do some more playtesting videos. I've just been a bit slack about that. We'll bring it back as I get later into beta testing here. If you'd like to try the game with this new update, like you can buy it right now on Steam and on itch. Steam, well, look, both of them are updated constantly, but Steam is where most of our attention goes if you post comments and things like that. If you do pick up the game, please consider leaving a review. If you have any problems, please consider joining the Discord and letting us know. Or if you have any feedback on anything I've said in this video, please feel free to join the Discord and tell me what you think. Because yes, I'm stubborn, but I want to hear about from players how they are experiencing the game and what makes it fun for them. So yeah, please do that. You can follow along on Twitter at WizardChess with an underscore afterwards, or you can follow me at VivaVault or the studio at 2pm Studios, and you can join our mailing list that I don't update very often at 2pm.substack.com. That brings us to the end. This was kind of a long one. Look, I make no apologies. There was a lot to say. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed getting some kind of exposition about how I think about the development during these videos. Like, I feel conscious that I often waffle on about like a bunch of unrelated, tangential, up in the air bits, but it's kind of why I make these videos, is to show people what it's like from the designer side, that things are not certain when you go into making a game. We're constantly designing, redesigning, changing our minds. And even if it's not something that people want to like interact directly with and give us their opinions, I just think it's interesting to see, right? To like understand the context behind where these ideas have come from over the course of the game. So yeah, I guess let me know if you think I should be more or less detailed or exactly the same level in these devlogs as well. You can leave a comment to that effect if you feel strongly. Anyway, I think I will leave it there for this one. Thank you so much for listening if you're still here at the end, and I'll catch you in the next one. Oops, I clicked out of my presentation. Well, peace out.